is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of Palm Springs Air Museum. We are back in the hangar with Dale Lesher Hannibal, who has, that is a great call sign.
Thank you.
I can't ask you how you got your call sign. I know that, I have Fluffy McClaws, which...
It's a good one. Fierce.
Yeah, it's fierce. It strikes terror in people. But now you're Rotary Wing.
I am.
And you started a class in June.
Yes, with pre-arrival training. Yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. So talk about pre-arrival training a little bit. What do you do with that?
Yeah, so we were with the Army National Guard in Arizona. It's called WATS, the Western Aviation Army Training Site. That is where we learned how to fly the UH-72 Lakota, as well as the H-60 for our classmates that weren't already qualified in it.
Okay.
Luckily, I'm an H-60 pilot from the fleet, so
are you?
I just had to do the Lakota training there, but it was great
cool.
Desert flying out there.
So what did you do? Were you in the fleet? What did you do? Were you ASW or SAR?
Yep, so MH-60 Romeo, so that is the ASW and SUW missions mostly. We can also collect intel to bring back to the ships. Yeah, I loved it. So. Got to deploy on an aircraft carrier as well as a destroyer, independent ops.
Really?
Had a blast, yeah.
So you flew for the fleet in anti-submarine. ASW, I say that, but anti-submarine warfare.
Yep. And
what'd you think?
Oh, I love it. I think it's such an amazing mission. The flying is really fun and dynamic, and it's kind of like playing a game of chess.
Well, I told you I was kind of around when they retired the Bravos, which off camera, I know why you have your call sign. He said, oh yeah, that's what my dad flew. Dad's airplane. How do you like the new bird?
Oh, I love it. So now we're back to the 60 Lima here.
Yeah.
So different tail wheel configuration as well as steam gauges. So it's fun seeing a different series of the same 60 airframe. The Romeo, on the other hand, it's pretty nice in the inside as well.
All digital.
All digital, great displays and great capabilities.
Yeah, for those of you who a steam gauge is all the basically analog dials, gauges, and which is what we have in most of the airplanes at the museum.
Right.
I have an F-117 in the inventory, the display inventory, but it's inert and doesn't come with anything. I would spend time in Leavenworth if we took a stealth fighter out. But the coming here, what's been your biggest challenge?
I mean, that's a great question. Really, it's the responsibility and, kind of the expectations that come with our mission that we are looking to learn here. We have big shoes to fill in the fleet. They're waiting for us at our test squadrons already. So it's really just understanding the gravity of what we're learning here and how we can give back to the fleet once we get to the other side.
Are you learning more for when you go back? Are you learning more aircraft performance or weapon system integration or both?
So right now it's mostly performance, handling qualities, flying qualities. We're looking to get that baseline down first so that we have the tools ready for us when we could get a new airframe. It seems like a lot of the testing that we'll do in our test squadrons will be weapons, systems, integration, software updates, and new capabilities on our airframes. So I think that will be more on the job for our specific airframes when I get back to the Romeo at the test squadron.
Do you think that, with some of the older birds, do you think you have more versatility as far as plug and play with the new airframe or less with systems integration?
Yeah, systems integration I think could apply more to the Romeo just because that is our current airframe that we're using to fulfill the mission. The cool thing here is that the aircraft are very versatile, as you were saying, just in terms of what we can accomplish for our syllabus training. We hooked on a cargo hook to the UH-72 Alpha, flew a trailing source pitot device to calculate the pitot differences in airspeed and performance outside of the rotor arc to get that undisturbed airflow. Yeah,
that's interesting. And so people don't think about that, but when you do all that instrumentation testing and stuff, some of it is way outside the envelope.
Absolutely.
So in learning how to manipulate the airframe, right? How much on the edge work are you doing, or how close do you get to the edge? When we see images of the old test pilots, right? Who would climb in, hair on fire, go in, burn the wings off, bring it back.
Right.
How much of that translates to today? A lot of it seems more like engineering.
Definitely engineering, and as we already talked about, the software installations. But I'm not a test pilot yet in full force. You know, I'm a test pilot under instruction. We have a very safe syllabus here, but to get us introduced to getting closer to the edges of the envelope, we have expanded limits and things that we can actually go to. That's way more than I went to in the fleet. So
really,
yes,
that's interesting. You know, we were talking previously about doing like a tail slide in F-18, which I've never seen. I've told Greg he's got to go out, see if we can find some video, but you'd never do that in the fleet.
Right.
Are you experiencing the same thing with rotary aircraft?
Absolutely. Really just getting us comfortable and making sure that we have the full tools associated with being able to do that for future aircraft. You know, we'll be the first ones to fly those envelopes and define those envelopes once we get to the other side.
So I'm gonna get you out on the record here.
All right.
A helicopter is harder to fly, isn't it, than
oh yeah,
than an airplane?
Yeah. I mean,
you're gonna take a lot of heat for this one.
Absolutely. I'm okay with that.
All right.
I'll stick to that side of the argument any day. I mean, we get to learn how to fly aircraft first, airplanes, in our flight school training, and then it's starting all over, learning how to hover in our first helicopter training module.
What's that like? I mean, is there any way to interpret it?
Oh man.
Is it from a fixed wing to a rotary wing? Because the possibilities are endless when you think about the inputs.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really just, you got to get the experience. There's nothing that you can say to even begin to describe it. But I am looking forward to when my classmates get to fly in the helicopters for the first time. I took one of the F-18 Hornet pilots on a cross country in a Lakota. Yeah. And it was pretty fun watching her fly a helicopter for the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a little white knuckle.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And you look at like bringing one of these birds onto a destroyer or an aircraft carrier in weather. Yep. Or flying in weather in one of these. That's not easy.
Oh no, but I mean, flying to the back of the boat is the best feeling in the world. That's the name of the game for helicopters in the Navy. Loved flying to the back of a destroyer, especially in those sea
Really?
states. Yeah. Oh yeah.
See, I've never heard that.
Gets your blood going, gets the adrenaline going a little bit. But that's when you know your experience, your training, all the practice that you put into it. That's when it really pays off. So you practice for a reason, and you want to go out and get that time, and so that's where it all meets.
Where are you going to go? What are you interested in, and where would you apply this training, or where do you think you want to end up?
I mean, that's a great question. Really, the road's all open. There's a lot of different pathways. I'm really looking forward to going to HX-21. It's a great group over there. So ready to join them, hopefully in 2023.
Do some tight flight test stuff.
Absolutely. Get back to the mighty Romeo for sure.
So you're going to get back and scare the heck out of the Chinese or the Russians, right?
I don't know. We'll see.
There you go. Where did you, when you were young, I asked this question. I said before, I built every model, read every book, did everything I could think of. Did you have a love of aviation, or did you kind of just get into it, or how did you end up taking this career path?
Oh man, so both my parents are now retired naval aviators. Dad's a helicopter pilot, mom was a backseater for the TACAMO community.
Oh, there you go.
And then my grandpa was Navy helicopters as well. He did all the Apollo rescues of the crews from the capsules. So got a pretty long lineage of helicopter pilots in my family.
There was no pressure.
Yeah, got the family business going a little bit, but I mean, really, I just saw my parents come home every day in flight suits. I met their coworkers. I grew up with all of them, so I knew already that there was no better community than naval aviation. So I had that, and then going to the academy, I decided.
That was my next question. You answered my question. So you're an academy kid.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So I already had that passion for aviation when I got there, and then I chose aerospace engineering, specializing in rotary aerodynamics.
Really?
And so that's when I kind of got to see behind the curtain of how things work, and that just really started my interest in the why behind how all the flying works.
Well, and that's what this is, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is all the why. Where everything is being automated.
Yep.
Everything. There's a good chance that these aircraft, rotary wing aircraft, will eventually be automated. I don't see them, well, we have drones, but I don't see large scale you know, these things operating on huge scale as opposed to drone technology, so to speak. What do you think? You think?
Well, so the H-60 guys, I can't talk very much about their expertise, but they already have kind of the manned-unmanned team going with MQ-8, and then we can really just continue that kind of teamwork between the two. So I would say that the 60s will stay around for a bit longer, either as the armed reconnaissance asset with an Overwatch Bing, a Reaper, or any of those kind of large-scale UAVs, or we could be the ones tasking a swarm of UAVs maybe. So just having that joint work to really expand those capabilities for both of us.
Well, in swarm, you know, we look at what's going on in Ukraine right now, a great example about swarm technology and where that's headed. You almost have to think that, and we can't get too far out of the Navy flight test envelope, but you almost have to think that it's going to have to be some sort of jamming capability, because if they evolve it where it's a lot of those little things, you're not going to be able to knock them all down. You're going to have to create something else.
Right.
So it's fascinating, you know, and everything changes, right? And so it's going to be very interesting in your career, because you're going to be working on things that we said before that haven't been invented yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are you excited about that?
Oh yeah, can't wait.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Hannibal.
Thank you.
I appreciate it for giving me your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the great conversation.
We moved on to a familiar airframe now, the Black Hawk. So tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we've got 5 UH-60 Limas in the schoolhouse. They're on loan from the Army, so these are Army Black Hawks and not Navy Seahawks. And what's especially interesting, with 4 of our 5 aircraft, you can see above you in orange, variable stability. So we have a special computer system and enough orange wires and actuators in this helicopter, because it has advanced flight control modes and computer controlled things, that we can program it to fly differently. We can make it fly better in some scenarios, we can make it fly worse. So as we do flight test programs in modern aircraft, whether it's fixed wing or helicopter, there's a lot of coupling that goes on in a helicopter between the rotor, the tail rotor, and learning how to adjust parameters in your flight control laws to make the helicopter easy to fly, easy to take off and land, is something that we can teach here with these aircraft.
Do all the students move through all the airframes?
We try to get every student, whether they're fixed wing or rotary wing, into every airframe that we have here. And we have, you know, as I said before, about 20 to 25 different flight exercises, and we're allowed some flexibility that we can move between aircraft to aircraft. So we try not to do the same type of event in the same aircraft for the same student. So if they fly this helicopter for a performance flight, maybe they fly the H-72 for longitudinal stability flight.
Well, we kind of talked about that before, because this makes the student at the end of the program really kind of versatile across any platform.
So flying 15 to 20 different aircraft, it's a very diverse set of experiences, and getting this comfortable being uncomfortable mindset, being able to get into an aircraft and perform at a high level, be able to isolate variables, and then report on it is part of what we teach. Humans are the best compensators in the world.
Okay.
And we field a lot of systems that have deficiencies in them for handling qualities or performance. The F-18 has deficiencies, the Black Hawk has deficiencies, and we identify those, but in a training mindset, we learn to overcome those deficiencies through training and compensation. And learning to think about it as compensation, as a test pilot, is one of our learning objectives, so that you can identify that the helicopter is not doing what I'm asking it to do. It's not because I'm doing it improperly or my training is bad, it's because there's a deficiency in the aircraft.
There's something with the aircraft.
So in that adaptability piece, as you start to fly more and more aircraft, you learn different compensation strategies for different aircraft. So the compensation strategy on a highly augmented helicopter is different than that of a low augmented helicopter like the H-58. So even between those two platforms, you can have some differences. So this is a OH-58C. It's a Bell product. The civilian variant's very similar to the Bell 206.
Yes.
It's a single engine helicopter. It's very basic from a helicopter's perspective and flight control systems. And we use it here at the schoolhouse for our high-risk envelope expansion flight test exercises. So the auto rotation in a helicopter is when the engine fails and you use the inertia in the rotor system in order to land safely. To develop that envelope for the flight manual is a very specific set of test techniques and build-up that we teach here through a series of 3 to 4 flights in test planning, risk mitigation. So the students will go out and find the edges of the envelope, determine when to stop testing and when to continue.
I was talking with Hannibal about that a little bit. I don't think she's done that yet in this, but she's headed that direction.
Yep. That course is currently in week 16 out of a 48-week curriculum. So in the second half is when they'll start doing that.
And auto rotation, for those who don't know what that is you have no power and the helicopter's basically pinwheeling, right, to get to the ground.
As long as the rotors are still spinning, there's a lot of energy left in them. So you keep the blades spinning near their max rotation speed and enter a glide profile. And at the end of that glide profile, as you get to the ground, you transform that energy into blade angle, which will then cushion the rate of descent to let you flare and touch down mostly normally.
Okay.
And how to do that flight test and how to build up those procedures is part of what we do here.
That's got to be hair-raising.
It's a lot of fun.
Where did these guys come from? Where did these helicopters come from? Are these
These were originally Army aircraft, and the Army transitioned their training helicopter from the OH-58 into the H-72. So they divested of the platforms, and the Navy took ownership of them. So these are Navy aircraft now.
That's cool. That's interesting.
Yep, and they're instrumented. You can see behind you, we've got a flight test instrumentation boom. We do the low airspeed exercise as well for hover performance, and those are angle of attack and beta vanes that feed into the instrumentation.
And this is goes back to the report writing, the educational component.
Goes back into that instrumentation lab. They'll download the data from the flight and then evaluate it, use that in their reports.
Fascinating, as Mr. Spock would say, fascinating. All right, we'll move on to another aircraft. Now, I love this helicopter. This will be really nice when it suddenly appears out on our ramp, But I don't know a lot about this particular type. I've seen them fly at air shows and places. Why don't you explain to what this is?
Sure, Fred. This is the UH-72 Lakota helicopter. It is a variant of the EC-135, civilian Airbus helicopter derivative. The Army transitioned to this as their primary trainer. We were able to get involved in that acquisition process and got 5 of the first aircraft that were manufactured here at Test Pilot School. It's a very robust platform. It's got multiple layers of augmentation or augmented flying qualities. So it's got an autopilot and it's got some other augmented modes. So we can use it in the syllabus to teach. This is a highly augmented helicopter. Now let's take a layer away. Now let's take another layer away. And now let's take all the layers away so that we're just flying the base helicopter. And all of those helicopters fly a little bit differently. It's also got capability for instrumentation. You can see this one's got the orange boom on the front as well. So we'll do low speed evaluations where they do performance and handling qualities in the hover with various wind conditions. We're also upgrading this helicopter to have an electro-optical infrared sensor put on the nose with a moving map display and a crew station in the back. Because all of our customers want more mission systems, more sensor capability, and getting that into our course is critical for our growth path into the future so that we can enable the warfighter to get better systems out to the fleet.
And that's not going to change, what you were talking about. No. And when you talk augment, that's software, fly-by-wire.
Fly-by-wire, more computers in the system so that the pilot's job as we are transitioning, and honestly, we've already transitioned into systems operators as operational pilots. I need an aircraft that as a base is predictable, safe, and easy to operate. And if I can do that, and I can spend more time working on tactics, employing sensors and weapons, then that's our end state.
What's interesting, you were thinking about it, it kind of struck me where you could say the 60s and 70s guys were slide rule, or girls were slide rule people, right? If they got up into this level of flight test, we've now gone into the augment software, which you're talking about augment airframe area where we can just change. We don't have to really think mathematically how we're going to change it. We can maybe change the software or do whatever we're going to do.
Well, there's still a lot of that math and science behind it. We carry the slide rule still on our patch and on our logo, and all of that basics is still there. We can just do it much faster with the modern computing systems now.
How many of those kids don't know how to operate a slide rule?
As a joke in our academics, the chief academic instructor will bring a slide rule out on the first day, say, okay, Let's do some logarithms.
And everybody's eyes get really big and like, oh no.
We're getting to the point where most people don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but from a standpoint of modification on airframes and benefit of essentially modification of the airframe, you can understand where software has just changed the game.
Yep. And it's a platform that's robust and reliable and supportable, and it's flexible too. Just like the Beaver, I can use it in various spots in the curriculum, and I can use this helicopter in various spots in the curriculum, and I can always get learning objectives met no matter where we are.
Well, cool. Well, before we basically get run over by an airplane, let's go see what else we got going on.
I think the Hornet's coming in.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey, and up she rises. Way hey, and up she rises. Way hey, and up she rises. Early in the morning, putting in the longboat until he's sober.